Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Human Reliability Track at the National Safety Conference. Hey, before we begin, just a couple of logistical notes. If you have questions during the session, please put those in the chat like we've been utilizing throughout the conference. I hope you're enjoying the conference and getting a lot of tidbits and nuggets to take back to your site, and also using the other features to interact with other participants that are part of the conference. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Willis Jernigan, the Director of Safety and Health with KOCH Company Services here in Wichita, Kansas. KOCH is a large privately held company with 120,000 employees worldwide in 60 different countries. But the majority of my time has been spent in the refining petrochemical business, and I am a longtime member of the Safety and Health Committee with AFPM. Also joining me today in our session is Chelsea Miller. Chelsea has 16 years in our industry. She joined Marathon in 2005. In 2014, she joined Chevron, and she currently works as an HSE team lead for fuels and lubricants, supporting process safety, managing safe work, and human and organizational performance. So Chelsea and I today will be talking about our journeys, and I would like to thank Chelsea and Chevron because they are ahead of KOCH and Flint Hills and in this journey, but they were also mentors for us as we began our journey and shared a lot of knowledge. You hear us a lot of times talk about there's really no patent on safety. It's about knowledge sharing, doing the best we can, learning from each other, not only internally, but externally when we can do that. So thanks to Chevron for helping us out on the journey today. Chelsea, anything you'd like to say before we get started?
No, thank you for the great introduction, Willis. And like you said, it's all about sharing, all about helping each other in this HOP journey and operational learning. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks. And just for the people in the audience, I am the moderator as well as the presenter. So we will try to manage the chat portion to keep an eye on what's going on. So hopefully that'll work. Next slide, please. So I want to start with the journey we've been on within KOCH Industries and the safety vision that we came up with about 2.5 years ago, and talk a little bit about that. And within our traditional companies of Flint Hills Resources and CASE, which is our fertilizer plants, like many of us, we had these life safety rules. We called them cardinal rules. And we felt, and then across KOCH, we were having opportunities to be a learning organization. And we started within FHR around 5 to 6 years ago, trying to understand what that means for us in that business. And then the learnings from that, we found opportunities across all of KOCH companies to think about, we need to change our vision when it comes to safety. And this is our vision here. And the reason that I say that is because, you know, we've had opportunities across KOCH where we've unfortunately had fatalities. And we realized through just learning and understanding context, we were not doing a good job of learning. So we feel that our biggest asset to our company are our employees. We can replace equipment, but we can't replace employees. So we do not want to, so let me go over the vision. The safety and well-being of our employees and communities is our first priority always. We make this happen every day by building capability in our people and resilience in our systems to adapt, prevent, contain, and recover so that when the unexpected happens, no one is killed or seriously hurt. So those last few words, we've never used those in any type of safety vision or theme before. That is our key, like I said, because our biggest asset are our employees. Does that mean we don't care about the recordabilities where you get 1 or 2 stitches or somebody slips and falls or twists their knee? No, we care about those within KOCH, But with that being said, we can recover from those, right? And we'll learn from those, but we need to focus on those high potential events or conditions, get people to understand the importance of reporting those so we can work on not killing or seriously hurting people within our organization. So Chelsea, you want to talk a little bit about Chevron's tenets of operation?
Yes, we get this question somewhat frequently lately in Chevron. Chevron has been on this HOP journey for the last 10 years or so. And some people ask, well, has HOP replaced, our tenets of operation? Has it replaced operational discipline? Has it replaced, stop work authority? Has it replaced our OE culture, operational excellence, right? And we say, no, it's not replaced any of those things. It's building on those, right? When we take a HOP lens to our safety culture, what we hope comes out of it is operational excellence, right? We hope the result is OE. But there are certain tasks and activities we do, right, that do require operational discipline still, those very human dependent tasks, right? But what we've done is we've tried to incorporate HOP into everything we do, right? So to take into consideration our 5 principles. So like you're saying, Willis, we assume that there will be errors, right? That people make mistakes. But we are amongst a system, right? And so how can we build resiliency, capacity, error tolerance into that system so that we can recover and not seriously injure or kill somebody? So we are totally aligned with what you have just outlined.
Great, thank you, Chelsea. If we could go back a slide, please. Thank you. So a little bit around KOCH, why the change for us. And you heard me talk about it, it's on the cover page, and I talked about cardinal rules. Why the change? In our organizations, one of our key guiding principles is really giving people the knowledge and understanding to be more principle-based versus rules, because you cannot capture every rule or every detailed line item, right? So you got to give people the knowledge so they can think for themselves. But what we did, we allowed detailed rules to override good judgment. And we stated that the cardinal rules needed to be flawlessly executed. And if they weren't, we took that, okay, you violated a cardinal rule. And some of those cardinal rules had to do with energy control, hot work, confined space, following MOC, following operating procedures, right? And that a lot of times resulted in discipline and maybe even termination. So we realized on this journey, it started about six years ago, and then people make mistakes. No one's perfect. So we are trying, and we've learned and embraced that humans make mistakes. And so that's some of the stuff that we're working on. And we think the applicability of the cardinal rules were directed more towards operations and maintenance and craft workers, where our fundamental EHS fundamentals aligned with our safety vision can be applied more broadly across the organization. And if you think back on cardinal rules for us, I think they were right at the time because the original intent of those rules was to have employees understand where the greatest risk was for them. But over the years, to be honest, it turned into a disciplinary process, right? And what happened was sometimes we didn't understand the context and we made a decision. And sometimes those decisions were made for numerous reasons, right? And then we really never learned. So what happened? Maybe 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the road, we had an event very similar to the one that we had, and we really didn't learn from. So that's a little bit around the KOCH journey and why the change. Next slide, please.
Willis, well said, and Chevron is totally aligned. You know, what we talk about is it's a deliberate decision to learn and improve versus blame and punish, right? I mean, you cannot do both. And so even when we have those certain tasks and activities that are, you know, have the cardinal rules, we still make the deliberate decision to learn instead of punishing and firing that and watching all of that expertise walk out the door, right? And so you're spot on. It's all about trying to really uncover all of that complexity, all of that stuff that the worker, that the person is navigating to be able to successfully complete their task, right? And so that's what we have. That's what our HOP principles that we're showing right here, and I'll walk through them, but that's what our HOP principles have really taught us. You know, error is normal, right? People make mistakes. Assume the error will happen. Assume that we're going to make a mistake, right? Because we're human, we're fallible. The second principle, systems drive behavior, right? Humans are a product of the culture, of the system in which we operate. Blame fixes nothing. Learning and improving is essential, and response matters. Response matters, I mean, think of it in terms of responding instead of reacting, right? How do we encourage this culture where people feel safe and empowered to speak up, to tell us where our safeguards are weak, to teach us about where we're brittle, right? To teach us about where that procedure isn't followable, or where we think we're able to follow the procedure, but actually for the last 10 years, that procedure's been out of date and we've never been able to follow it as written, right? And so these are our guiding principles that allow for the culture to sort of shift and people start talking to us about the real deal, right? And that's where Chevron and KOCH, we are on this journey, right, to really encourage that shift in the culture where people feel safe, that motivated, responsible to speak up, to share with us where we're deviating, where we're drifting, where it's just where we're just adapting. You know, let's talk about that. Let's figure out if our safeguards are adequate.
Yeah, Chelsea, just to add on to that a little bit before we go to the next slide is, you know, you think about, we've had a lot of people ask us, because we're trying to make it a safe space to be a better learning organization, right? And it's not only a safe space for those that were involved in the event, but also getting people involved that maybe have done that same task, right, to get their point of view, to bring that into the learning. And people ask us, oh, so that means you aren't going to fire anybody anymore? Well, we're still going to have accountability, right? And there's a lot of different ways that we do that, but that accountability is looked at through a different lens, right? So the safety event shouldn't be the straw that breaks the camel's back that then drives that accountability. There's probably a lot of other signs associated with people, right, that we should be recognizing. So that's a topic for another discussion. But I think the key is getting more than just the people involved, like you said, and really learning and utilizing those tenets, right, from human organizational performance to really learn, understand context, so have soak time, don't finish it. And we've seen empowering employees, they come up with some great solutions, right? And I have a tendency, because I've been in this organization for 41 years. So when people, I've been guilty of it, come to me that, oh, I know how to fix that. We dealt with that 20 years ago. Well, 20 years ago is not today. So I personally have had to work hard to listen more and talk less when we respond to situations. So next slide, please.
Yeah, this is just a little reminder to us about what HOP is all about. So I won't read the slide to you, but at its core, HOP is all about, you know, making it easier for the worker to get it right and harder to get it wrong, right? So it's all about how do we set folks up for success? How do we assume, that an error is gonna happen? And rather than focusing on the behaviors or focusing on getting that person to try harder or to do the work better, how can we focus on the system and set that person up for success, right? How can we build some tolerance into the system so that when we do make some errors, that the system can absorb them and not have catastrophic outcomes, right? So HOP, human and organizational performance, some call it human performance, some people call it human reliability. It's all the same, but at its core, it's all about setting people up for success, making it easier to get it right, harder to get it wrong. The reason that we've sort of shifted to calling it HOP, human and organizational performance, is because it pulls in that organizational piece, that cultural, that system piece, right? And so it's all about how humans are interfacing with machines and other humans and cultures and equipment, right? And so we focus on that system as a whole, rather than just the human, right? And getting the human to perform better. It's how can we focus on the system as a whole that we're all existing and operating in and influenced by.
Good. Next slide, please. So within the KOCH organization and the refining, petrochemical, and fertilizer group that really had those traditional cardinal rules, as we go to the fundamentals, after we talk about the vision, and we've been talking about the vision within the organization, and we just changed the cardinal rules. We just got rid of those earlier this year because we realized we're doing all this vision work. We're looking at human and organizational performance, being a better learning organization. Ooh, we forgot something. We need to get rid of the cardinal rules and really tie back what we're trying to achieve with that vision and where we're going. So we're working hard, and I think people that are attending the conference, attending the session, understand that changing behavior does not happen overnight, because we all know that. But one of the first tenets we have is getting people to be committed to the vision, so they'll understand their role and their responsibilities and strive for excellence in their work, right? So we want them to understand the systems and tools available to execute the work safely, and use good judgment and critical thinking to continuously improve. So, we believe that an environment that is principle-based rather than rules-based enables our employees to adapt and use good judgment to get best results. So some of those examples are really understanding work authorization programs. And a lot of times, I think we use the word train, we check the box. And I think we need to be more focused around education and getting good feedback, right? On all these sub-bullet points I have here on the slide. There are a lot of things we need our employees to understand that are important to the role, and knowledge of these things is each one of our employees' responsibilities, right? So us as leaders, we need to help them get the programs in place and help educate on those programs. We all know you can't write everything down. I might have mentioned that earlier in the presentation. So good judgment and critical thinking are needed to be successful, right? We have these employees that run these units and these plants 24/7. They do a great job of it. And I think the work that we've done, Chevron done, and there's others. You heard P66 talk about how they're incorporating some of the same tenets, right, in their organization. And we've improved so much in our industry. And if you look at the data, we're basically one of the safest industries if you look out in the general work environment. But just really getting those people to use good judgment and critical thinking is so important, right? Really getting people to understand, think about what can get you killed. So you heard me talk about, we use that in our vision. We don't want to kill anybody or seriously injure people. And so that is new for us. We had that goal 0, we had 0. We know people make mistakes. We know things are going to happen. We should expect that things are going to happen, right? But before they do, hopefully getting people to understand critical thinking, good judgment, early reporting of conditions that might have had a bad outcome that could have seriously injured or killed them, reporting those, figuring out solutions, sharing those are what we're striving for. And like I said, it's a journey. It's a journey. And we're just encouraging our workers to be seeking to better understand the tools and systems and challenge what they have. Just be open and challenge. We try to have an open door policy, be transparent. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? We want people to report events to learn and improve. And I talked about it briefly in the previous slide. Even if we failed safely, because you see the reference to the black line, blue line, and Chelsea's going to talk about that a little bit later, really understanding reality. But we want people to be open and honest, right? And like I said, even if we fail safely, recognize that just because Willis got in the car this morning and Willis drove to work, somebody ran through their red light when mine turned green. Ooh, that was close. It's dark. We have a lot of people that run here in this town, like a lot of people. Some people aren't lit up as well as they should be in dark, and I swerve and miss those people. And I get to work every day safely. And over time, just in my journey with understanding what we've been working on the last 6 years, is I changed my way of thinking and doing that. That's what we're trying to change in the workplace. So getting people to report even if they failed safely is key, right? Operational learning is focused on where we deviate from the plan, because we know, and Chelsea's going to talk about this later, we have these well-defined plans. They don't always work out. And the majority of the time, we finish a task without incident, right? We really respect our employees by creating the conditions that engage them in learning. So that's really important for us to get people to understand that we care enough about them. They're our most valuable asset, that we're committed to them reporting, learning, raising their hand, et cetera. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Within one of the KOCH companies, GP as well has been working through this, and they made a good conscious decision to shift from discipline-based to a learning organization. And just a good example is they saw a 51% reduction in SIFs, serious injury and fatalities, and an 84% reduction in safety-related separations, right? So that old model of if people violate a cardinal rule, they could be terminated. So by contrast, they saw a 148% increase in high potential event or condition reporting, which shows that by committing to learning without arbitrary discipline, they increase trust, which in turn, again, increase learning. So some great metrics. And that's what we're striving for across KOCH. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so let's just talk about operational learning a little bit, which we've been talking about the whole time, right? And so operational learning is all about what Willis said, right? Creating that trusting environment, that psychological safety, if you will, where people feel comfortable, accountable, responsible to speak up, right? And talk about how the work is actually happening. It's really just, it's not even drift, right? It's not even deviation. It's just this normal variability of how work happens, right? It's never executed the same way twice, right? And so it's just that normal variability of work. It's making people feel comfortable to talk about it, to share. Operational learning focuses on just how workers are adapting day in and day out to successfully complete their tasks. It talks about how failure and success occurs in the field where work really happens. There, at Chevron, we talk about, there's multiple ways to do operational learning, right? But what we focus on is that, we don't have to wait for an event to happen to learn. we can look at, I work in terminals and lubricants plants, right? And so we look internally at our operations and say, gosh, what do we do on a routine basis? Let's go study it. Let's go talk about what it takes to get this task, this very routine base business work done successfully. And what that's going to uncover, right, is the health of our safeguards. It's going to uncover weak signals. It's going to uncover error traps that we're navigating anyway, right? And so there's lots of different ways to learn. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the idea here is it's all about getting the folks that actually do that work to talk to you about it, to share with you their pinch points, their barriers, their hurdles, right? Extract that information and get it back into the system so that we're improving the system. We're setting the next folks up for success when they do the same task, right? That's what it's all about. So if we go to the next slide, the black line, blue line, it's a great graphic, a great image to really demonstrate this concept, right? And so the black line is the plan, right? Is the procedure. And we're always executing work against a plan. We always have, we've always talked about how we're going to do it, everything that's in place. But then when we actually start executing the work, right, that's when we start adapting. And, that's when we encounter weather and similar operations that are going on, right? And, we don't have that harness like we thought we did, or man, that procedure is out of date. How do we even accomplish this? Right. So that's the blue line. So when we start executing work, we establish a blue line. And like we're saying, when we create that safe space for people to talk about when they overperform, when they underperform, that's operational learning, right? That's the gold. That's what we're trying to extract from a number of these tools that we're using. Hey, tell me when you have to deviate. Tell me when you have to adapt. Tell me when you aren't able to follow the plan like we talked about. So that we can, if you go to the next slide, it's another demonstration a little bit. So tell me about when you're able to adapt, right? So we're able to understand if our safeguards are adequate, right? Like that is the whole goal. So, this bow tie diagram, right? Mitigative and preventative safeguards, right? We put that on the blue line to help demonstrate this concept. When we talk about the blue line, not the black line, I don't want to hear how we should be doing something or how we planned to do it. I want to talk about how we are doing it, right? Tell me this real deal. Tell me about the execution of the work. And the idea here is we're able to understand if our safeguards are in place, are they functioning? Why? Because, historically we've built our safeguards along that black line, right? Or how we think work is happening. But when we create the safe space and we get people to talk to us about the real deal, we're able to understand if our safeguards are actually able to help us when we're veering, right? When we're just doing what we need to do to accomplish our task. And so it's all about that capacity, about that resilience, about that error tolerance, because we're never right on that black line, right? So we're really trying to understand if our safeguards are going to work when we're on that blue line. If we go to the next slide, I'll just share a couple of examples of these operational learning tools. So, this slide is specific to Chevron, and I'll just talk about a few examples here. But the idea, right, with an operational learning tool is to really engage the folks that do that work, right? Understand from their perspective, their experience, what are the issues that you're facing, right? Tell me about this activity. Tell me about what you're navigating day in and day out to successfully complete this task. Those are those learnings, right? Those vulnerabilities, those issues that are going to get uncovered. Then you're going to ask them, what do you think, in your opinion, what could we do to make this better? What's not even a solution, but what could we do to improve the situation or something about this task, right? And then, the next phase is we go in and we action that. We bridge that gap, right? We close that action, we come back around, we verify and we validate that the action we took actually improved the original issue that we talked about, right? And then we start it all over again. That's the goal of all of these different operational learning tools. And so there's a few examples like learning teams. You know, Chevron has been on this journey with learning teams since 2017-ish, and they are a core piece of our culture now. We end up doing more learning teams on successful work, on just normal work, than we do on events. And that's the goal, right? That's getting in front of it. That's getting proactive. That's not waiting to learn. That's not, you know, just learning from events. It's getting in front of things. We also have a tool called the Safeguard Learning Tool, which is sort of like a mini learning team. It's a peer-to-peer dialogue. Hey, what's going on with this task? Tell me about what the difficulties are. Tell me about what, you know, what you think we could do differently with this task to make it easier, to do it better, to, you know, have more success with this. And all of these tools go after sort of the same operational learning concepts, all about learning and improving. So over to you, Willis.
Thanks, Chelsea. Next slide, please. So as I talked about early on, within KOCH, Flint Hills, we have the cardinal rules, and we basically got rid of those because of what we've been discussing today. But as we talk about and educate folks why we did that and why it's better aligned with the vision to have these fundamentals, these last three slides are really some talking points that we've got to our leaders, so when they're having discussions with their employees, they can help them really understand the importance around knowing what I'm authorized to do. Do I really understand my limitations to avoid putting myself and others at risk, right? So it's that working, learning, and improving as a team is key, right? A successful team is rooted in reality and intellectual honesty. And I think for us, that's key. Where we've in the past relied on detailed rules, and we've talked about that, and that just doesn't work. Next slide, please. And then will each one of us have the courage to stop? I have to challenge myself to ask for help and seek the best knowledge when I'm unsure. And we talked about changing a culture is tough, especially in the old model of cardinal rules and possibly leading up to termination or a letter in your file or something like that. How do we get people to feel comfortable to raise their hand? And that's one of the questions we have in our chat. And I'll give an example here in a minute, but I'll go over the question with everyone. And then, do you have the courage to challenge others? Are we giving employees the right education to properly challenge their coworkers, their supervisors, maybe, and even the plant manager, right? Or even myself when I'm out at a site and someone sees me doing something that doesn't align with our vision. Next slide, please. We are going to hold ourselves and each other accountable to do these fundamentals. So we ask our folks to take the time to review them because it is something different, right? It is a different point of view. And work with your supervisor for more information if you have any questions. So this is a big step for us in our culture within KOCH. We're getting there. Are we where we need to be? No. It's a journey you cannot drift away from, right? And building a strong team that is capable and resilient, right? That can adapt, prevent, contain, and recover. So when the unexpected happens, no one is killed or seriously injured. That is the key for us. And I think that's the theme that you've seen Chelsea and I share today with you, is that. So I do have a question in the chat, and it is, thank you. As you have integrated this operating philosophy in your organization, were workers hesitant to speak up about how work is actually done in fear of retaliation? If so, can you provide an example of how you overcame this hurdle and cultivated this psychologically safe culture? Well, I'll share an example of an event that occurred. We don't have time to really go into the deep details, but basically energy control was missed. Verification wasn't done. Communication was poor. We had people sprayed with sulfuric acid. So we made a lot of assumptions. And this was in the old model. And what do you think occurred? We lost a 23-year supervisor. We had some other disciplinary processes. What happened? Well, after that, we were in the journey of kicking off our human and organizational performance, being a better learning organization, educating the frontline workforce. 8 months later, something very similar in that same operation happened with sulfuric acid. So due to that education and the understanding of being a learning organization, before we got the learning team together, the employees had already started coming up with ideas. So it's probably going to connect with others sooner and better than others. But that's just an example of really, in this environment, the employees knew we were serious. And there were some other minor incidents, but the employees that were from that unit were involved, realized the difference of the actions that took place. We're going to learn, we're going to understand context. And by the time the learning team was put together for that shift and the other shift, because of the work the site had done and the supervisors really being transparent with their employees that we have to learn, it's a safe space, they'd already come with some great solutions that we missed the first time because we didn't do a good job in the investigation.
Hey, Willis, I would just add that, learning teams really give folks, an organization, a tool to really try to embody the HOP principles, right? It's like something that you can go do, right? And just to speak a little bit about Chevron's journey, we when we first started this, we started talking about just the HOP principles, right? Hey, here's this philosophical shift, right? This mindset, this different way of viewing the world, right? And people kind of marinated on that and soaked on it, and they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can get behind this. I get where you're coming from. But then when we kind of came out with a few tools, right, like learning teams, you really get the opportunity to act on these principles, right? And so it really helps move the needle, right? The learning team format really forces this decision, right? Am I going to fire that 23-year employee and watch them walk out the door? Or am I going to pull them in, engage them, and ask them to help me improve the issue, fix the issue, whatever it is, right? And by doing that, by pulling them into the learning team and going, hey, we realize anybody could have made this mistake. We may have set you up for failure. The system may have. Help us uncover how we can do this differently going forward so this never happens again. That whole learning team process really helps the organization shift, right? It pulls in leadership to very deliberately ask themselves, am I going to fire that guy? Or am I going to pull him in and ask him to help me with this? That's a deliberate choice, right? That's response matters. That's blame fixes nothing. That's people make mistakes, right? And then when you have, going through the motions of the learning teams, you're engaging the people that do the work, right? And what does that do for them? The leader comes in, kicks it off, says, this is a safe space. There's not going to be any repercussions here. So they feel that psychological safety. They want to help, right? Their leader, the person they know and trust is pleading with them to, hey, help me get this better. Let's do this differently. So of course they feel compelled, responsible, accountable to really help make the issue different, right? And that builds accountability, that builds that responsibility, that builds that empowerment. And so the learning team is really this tool that we can use that just, it's not even it just automatically starts shifting the culture, because you either get on board or you don't. And it is completely transparent, right? And it forces the highest level leaders to make that very deliberate decision, which is very transparent.
And when the frontline folks see that actions are louder than words, and we do that, it really helps the momentum, right, at that site. And then how we share those learnings and how that's taken place really just it starts snowballing, getting people to really speak up, feel comfortable, and that just drives that learning organization even more, even
Yep.
when we fail safely. So great, Chelsea, thank you for being part of this with me. It's been a good journey for us. The journey's not over. So I think that's all the questions we have. We're just about out of time. Thank you for attending the session. We're grateful for your support, and especially the flexibility during this time of how we had to go from a hybrid conference to all virtual. And I can't thank the AFPM staff on short notice for being agile and shifting to all virtual, right? So after this session, we have a break from 10:15 to 10:45, and that's Central Time. Sessions will resume at 10:45 Central Time. And thank all of you who attended our session. Chelsea, thank you again. As always, I learn something new every day, even though I've been in the industry 41 years. And just Chelsea and I working together, she's given me a few nuggets that I can use in KOCH. So thank you, Chelsea.
Same, Willis. I've learned a lot from you and this just working together with this presentation. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
All right, everybody have a good rest of the conference, and have a safe rest of your week. Thank you.